We're going on 3. Okay, whenever you're ready. I'm ready.
Well, hello there, Terrible Warriors. We return with another podcast spotlight episode. And this one's interesting. As you know, I've been interviewing other actual play podcasts because we've been taking a break from running our games this year because gestures vaguely all around. And I've been having a really fun time meeting these other podcasters and hearing about their stories and also the way they interpret what an actual play podcast is. As we're starting to learn, everyone's got a different variation on the theme. And everyone approaches this kind of thing, this idea of recording your tabletop games differently. There's no wrong or right way about it. And this interview that you're about to hear is with two wonderful people that was connected to me by Sean Howard. I'm going to get a shout out there from the Fable and Folly Network. As you heard, we talked about from Alba Salix and the End of Time and Other Bothers interview. Go back and listen to that one. It was a good time. And he sent me an email with the headline, Blind Interview Request, and connected me with these two people. What's very fun nice. Is Zach and James, as I'm going to formally interview you in a second, don't have a podcast yet. Well, they do. They've got a bunch of other things, but in the theme of the actual play podcast that we're talking about, it's in development. It's going to be coming out soon, later this year, and I'll come back and remand you about it. So there's nothing to link you to right now because it's still in that...
Well, there's a feed. The feed exists.
that gestational phase. And so... welcome here.
It's purely conceptual.
To the table. Oh, it's going to be one of those interviews. Welcome to the table here. Welcome here. So tell me a little bit about you're launching an actual play, as I understand,
yes,
near the end of the summer or the fall of this year.
That is right. I believe the official term is fall 2021.
Question mark, dot, ellipsis.
That's a bit of a lie. We've been telling a small lie.
Is it third quarter? Is that
Q3.
What that is? Is that what third quarter is? Is that what Q3 is?
Is August
I think it depends
Q3?
when your fiscal calendar year starts. And so time has no meaning, yes, and everything is subjective.
Money doesn't exist. You're right.
So,
I forgot we were living in the era of Reddit and stonks.
That will age well, I wonder. So tell me, let's work our way backwards then. Tell me about this show that you're going to launch, and then we'll work our way back as I get to learn who you are, of where you've come from and what you've done. Because I understand already that you've got some other shows that you have done in the past, and I would love to hear all about them. But let's start with this show that you're launching. Tell me a bit about this new actual play podcast that we can all get excited for.
So the show is called Realms of Peril and Glory, with the very clever acronym RPG. And the basic kind of one-line premise
we wanted to game the algorithm.
Oh, yeah, really game the algorithm.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Terrible Warriors, there's nothing to convey what my show's about, and I realized far too late there's no SEO in my name.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but it's great. It's such a good name, though.
Yes. So Realms of Peril.
Realms of Peril and Glory. Yeah, so each season is a different story and different system with a different bunch of players. I GM a couple of the campaigns. James GMs a couple of the campaigns.
That's right.
Yeah, and we just have a lot of fun.
So let's talk about actual play podcast. What kind of an AP show is this going to be? Because everyone's got a different take on it. Some shows that I've talked to are heavy on the storytelling and a radio drama, and if you weren't told in the show notes, you might not know it's even a game that they're playing because they don't reference the rules. You won't hear the dice rolls. It's just all in character. Other shows treat it kind of tutorialized, where you can hear the game talk and hear the game, and they're also using it as a vehicle to teach people about these games and how to run these games. So where do you kind of land on that spectrum of actual play podcasts?
Honestly, I think we're kind of deliberately all over the place, right? Like,
I think we're very staunchly in the middle, I think, of those two dichotomies, because we really love storytelling and fun, but also we don't shy away from the fact that we're playing a game.
Yeah.
So what are we going to hear on the show? Will we hear music and sound effects
100%,
and like lots of character voices, or because some shows are just done live to tape around the table?
Well, we're doing several different series. The first one that we'll be releasing is the one that Zach is running, which is his campaign is called Veil, in a world of his own creation, which is 13th Age.
Zongroff, Meredith, Torbrennan, and Isadora. You feel your hearts racing in your chest. the anxiety of your dream breaking to the bright sun of a new day in the city. You each race to the nearest window, checking to see if it had truly been a dream, and with a sigh of relief, you find the city unharmed. Zongroff. You see the familiar streets of the Ivy Lanes, covered in merchants trying to disassemble the mischief of students from the night past. And in the distance, Harbor Park and the hulking figure of Justice Hall, home to the new Harbor Watch.
That one is very... it's very story based. It's very narrative. Yeah, very very narrative. But like on
and you just
the
say,
other
is
hand,
it a custom system or just a custom setting?
So custom
no,
world,
it's just a custom setting.
with the 13th Age game system.
Yeah,
oh, okay,
the
cool.
13th Age game system. Whereas I am going to be doing I'm going to be doing my own 5e campaign, and the 5e campaign. I think what I'm going for more of is closer to. We're all playing a game and trying to have a fun time with it, and there's a story mixed in there.
Yeah.
And
so this is kind of fun. It sounds like Realm of Peril and Glory is going to kind of explore the different takes of actual plays
That's
in a way.
kind of
that
the
every
hope,
time a new... So the GM will kind of more or less be the producer of that series and will have a real say on how the sound is going to show. So it's going to be an anthology podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea is that we're going to have characters that you love and you want to come back to. We haven't formally decided, but we kind of talked about how we love the stories and the characters, and we might end up coming back to some of them. But likewise, we love doing kind of just off-the-wall crazy stuff. Like we're doing a whole season that James is running of a system called You Awaken in a Strange Place, which is specifically designed to do a 2-hour session one-shot where you make up the game system as you go.
Yeah.
And it's
fully
improvised.
Even the system. Even the system is improvised.
There are some very bare bones. It was Jacob Andrews from Drawfee, the YouTube arts series, concocted it, and so we reached out to him and asked very nicely whether we could play it on our show. And what it essentially is like there's some very bare bones, but it's designed that you come in and then you get your players to each separate one comes up with a genre, one of them comes up with a setting, and one of them comes up with an adjective to describe said setting. And then the GM, which is me for this series, has to try to come up with a story. Everybody makes up random statements about the world to try and make my job ever so slightly easier. It always
sounds
makes
like
it
a
harder.
much more improvised version of Fiasco.
Oh yeah, it's basically just an improvisation game, but turned into a role playing game, and I
also
just have
aping
to make up a
tabletop. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Oh yeah,
each episode of that's going to have like different players, and we love it.
To the degree that you ask each of the players when they come up with their character, what 4 skills is your character great at, moderately good at, kind of bad at, and terrible at. And each of the players comes up with four sort of doing verbs, and then the GM or Zach, who is helping me, comes up with another 4.
Where you're like, help me, Zach.
And those 16 verbs are the skills for the game. And every time somebody wants to do something, you have to make them roll on this list of and it's oftentimes it's like crocheting or
so can I present
cooking.
Can I present another challenge on this show?
Oh yeah.
You should also see if you can, at the end of each of these little 2-hour one-shots, print them as a 1-page RPG for me to download. So that I can keep a record of this game.
I don't know if we can legally do that. I don't know if that's legal.
Because I have been wanting for years. I've got this idea of I love the concept of 1-page RPGs.
Oh,
and
we're doing
a lot
of
design
those.
challenge of putting all of that onto a single page and looking it over. Well, if you're going to do a lot, I'm not going to tell you about the name of my show then, because I've come up with a banger of a title and I'm holding on to it and I'm going to put it on Twitch.
Oh yeah, because we'll poach it from you 100%.
Yeah, you 100%. Will absolutely.
Yeah.
But I love the concept of 1-page RPGs and
literally
where
just have the Grant Howitt book here.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, and a lot of them are going to be Grant's games, but the idea of getting an entire game squeezed into one or the other side, if you want to double-side it, and also convey not just the rules of the game, but the design choices to help convey the intention of the game, because there's so much room you don't have to get that across. So you have to do it through art and layout and all that. So
it's funny, in our first holiday, where I actually built a custom short system called Christmas Caper. Where essentially you're in the North Pole and you go on wacky fun adventures to save Christmas as like an elf or a reindeer or a snowman. And we're going to be selling the game system at the same time as the season comes out this Christmas.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So Realm of Peril and Glory is not your first go at this rodeo of podcasting. I understand you also have a history of radio dramas. Tell me a little bit about these.
Yeah, so
this is at least something I could listen to now.
We make the show called The Orphans, which is a science fiction show. Again, very much like Realms of Peril and Glory, where each season tells a different story. In the Orphans case, it's in a vast, interconnected science fiction universe where there is a clone workforce who serve a militaristic government, and we tell individual stories of these different people who live in this world. We have a core cast.
Is this a scripted show or also an improvised show?
No, it's completely scripted. We have a core cast of 12 actors who play different variations of these clones, and we've written 5 series of it now. And a few specials, a few live shows, and we are working on more now.
Cool. So have the contacts and the people that you've made and worked with on these dramas on The Orphans, are they going to be participating in your tabletop adventures?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah?
You can look forward to, I think one of the selling points of the show will be we're really going to have a who's who of kind of UK and British audio drama talent. Yeah.
So what took you from working on a radio drama to, I know what I could do. I could play a tabletop game with a bunch of these actors and also record that. That sounds easy.
Well,
why do that? what brought you from A to B
well,
there?
I'll tell quickly.
Because for some people it's a very easy leap, and for others it's another universe.
Go then.
James, what have you got to say? And then I'll tell the story about Rebellion.
Well, I mean, that's true because you were doing Rebellion beforehand, but I got really into D&D like out of university, and we started producing The Orphans at university. And I got heavily into it. It was sort of my main social structure for meeting new people and having friends. And I just loved it so much, and the concept of using it to tell a story, or really just to like record myself having fun as like an excuse to have a fun time. And I decided that I really wanted to make my own show about just record myself playing D&D with some friends, and at the same time, obviously Zach. His own story, which he will.
I came in and muddled it up. I producered it.
Yeah, well, no, you on your end, or I suppose on your end, you had Rebellion for Orphans.
Yeah.
So why don't you say a bit about that?
Yeah. So we actually have a game system set in the Orphans world that we've been working on for like 3 years or 2 years or something like that. It's designed by Ella Watts, who is a part of our team on the show. She's done an incredible job of making this really wonderful system that is really reflective of the world of the show. We've tried a couple times to get it recorded. Unfortunately, fate has not smiled on us, but we've not given up on that. It's still kind of in development and in the process of coming together. So that was really my introduction to playing RPGs, was Ella coming to me and saying, hey, I have this really great idea. Let's make a system. And I said, okay, let's see what that's like. I'd heard a few D&D podcasts before. I love D&D podcasts because there's something about the stories mixed with the people coming together to have a great time and the collaborative nature of it. I love so much.
And it's one of the few times where when you're listening to a story being told, as a listener, you're discovering it at the exact same time as the storyteller.
Yeah.
And this, like, it's a collaborative event, even on the listener side, that there's very few times, even like with improv, there's rules to improv where the performers, the kind of secret is they usually know where it's going to go, more or less. Like there's only so many ways that river moves, and especially a troupe that's performed for a very long time, they've got a couple go-tos that they can keep moving with, and whereas with tabletop, because of the rules, it offers like a bedrock that lets you leap off into the unknown, way more than true improv allows for.
It's
so
like
when you're
walking
listening
down
to
a
these
road
shows,
that builds itself,
and so when you're listening, it's almost addictive because you're on that discovery with the players in real time. And you get to be surprised when they get surprised, and it is a surprise for everyone. And there's, I think it was Monster Hearts that wrote it as the story is feral. No one's in control.
So
it
good.
exists.
That's great.
It exists in the middle of the table, and no one has any say about it.
No, that's the thing. That's what I love about it as a creative, is that I as the GM, have a lot of control over the story, but there's nothing stopping someone else wrestling control away from me.
Exactly.
Or
It's still a
spinning
little
us off
wild.
in a crazy direction.
Exactly. And there is a bit of like in Dungeons and Dragons, the GM is more like you're riding on a saddle and you have reins.
Yeah.
But there's some games like Powered by Apocalypse games where you're on a bronco and you've got nothing. You're just being bucked wild. And there's no say about it, because if you're playing a game like I mentioned Monster Hearts again. You don't even get to come up with the NPCs. You don't get to come up with the challenges. Like it's all presented by the players during character creation. They're participating in the world building. And so you can't prepare a game in advance in a game like that, because you don't know what game you're going to play until you find out which people are showing up to high school that day.
It's true. That's the joy of the fully improvised one, the You Awaken in a Strange Place, because I don't even get to plan a story before the session. I'm essentially just the lead maker-upper. I'm the lead maker-upper. I just have to I'm just the one that they've picked to talk more than everyone else, and that's the game. And it's completely off the wall.
We gave him a Christmas rom-com the other day, and he had no idea what to do with it.
I hate rom-coms, and I don't know what.
Have you heard of Passion de la Passionelle?
No.
By Brandon Lee and Gambetta.
No.
It's a Powered by Apocalypse game. It's currently in Ashcan. It's going to be kickstarting soon. It is a telenovela tabletop RPG.
Oh, God.
Where you play as the cast of characters on a favorite telenovela, but also you're in front of an audience at home watching it on TV who's reacting to the show.
Oh, that's so... What's that called?
So it's playing... I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but it's Passion de la Passionelle. And it's Brandon Lee and Gambetta making this idea of like this Latinx telenovela, romantic comedy drama story. It's soap opera, the RPG. And where you have like a character where you can play a move of he has a twin the whole time, and they come in, the twins wearing the eye patch.
Oh my God.
And then there's all these twists, or like amnesiac, sudden amnesiac, or the trope in a soap opera where a baby is born and then they're a 20-year-old the next week.
See, this is what I love about TTRPGs, and that's why I wanted to make RPG the way we ended up making RPG, because I wanted to celebrate how versatile this medium is. Like, you can go from telling a telenovela story, you can go sci-fi, you can go dungeons, but you can do anything. It's insane.
The last interview I just did, their podcast did an episode on what's called the 8 Ways of Fun with tabletop RPGs. And the combat in Dungeons and Dragons is only one of those 8 kinds of fun, the challenge type. And there's all these other types that are out there, right? And so you have these, games like Passion that have no combat. Not really. I mean, maybe a slap across the face and a glass spilled in someone's... But there's no health points. A game like Masks, where you're playing as teenage superheroes, so you think you're going to be off to fight bad guys, but the game itself is actually about community building and finding your identity. And your stats are changing as you play the game because you're a teenager. You don't know who you are yet. You don't even know what your powers are yet. And the game itself is not actually about your powers and using them in combat. It's about standing up to the adults in the room and going, I know who I am. You don't get to tell me that.
Yeah.
And so you play these games, and sometimes I approach certain games and I'm expecting one story, and it delivers a completely different one. We mentioned just before we started recording this interview that we did a session 0 on Nibiru, and you've heard of Nibiru, and you were thinking of looking into it. And Nibiru,
we've got a game recording at the end of the month.
We've got a game recording.
Oh my goodness. Is all about, like, you create a character who's an amnesiac who has no memory of where they came from. But as those memories start coming back, those memories might not be human. They might not be from this world, the world that the game is set in. It might instead be from our world here on Earth. You might be remembering that you were a robot, or you're remembering that you were an animal, and or you're remembering other people's memories.
Yeah.
And so these vagabonds, but then through the game, you get to declare these memories associated to your die roll. So as you do an action, instead of just trusting the D4 that you're rolling, you can say, you know what, I've got a memory point. I'm counting this as a success, and I'm associating this action, I'm leaping over a valley or leaping over a gap right now. And as I do that, I remember jumping rooftop to rooftop to rooftop, like at the opening of Aladdin. And I'm some street urchin, like some image of a street rat doing parkour across rooftops. And now I've got a permanent boost to my acrobatic skill forever. And I have got this memory of leaping from rooftop to rooftop. And the next time I make a memory, I could connect it to that previous memory. I can start making a story. And once you have 8 of those memories, you create a revelation where you get like really interesting powers.
Stuff,
I'm so excited.
And everyone
to
at the
play Nibiru.
table is doing that. It's
Me too.
it's like a journaling RPG.
Yeah.
Which is so fascinating, but also still improvised because you're making these up in the spot. And you might have an idea going in, I want my character to be this, and you want to reveal your hidden idea over time as you play, or you're going in truly blank and you're just making it up with each die roll, and you're just going to let the game reveal your character to you. And both are valid strategies in Nibiru.
Something I'm looking forward to in our Nibiru game is actually, it's going to be the first, because we're planning this stuff so far in advance, but it's going to be the first time in the series that neither of us are the GM. We've actually got Ella Watts, who's designed the Orphans system, coming on being a guest GM for a one shot of Nibiru. And
also, we both wanted to play something for once.
Yeah, it's like, please, can we just play?
I know what that feeling.
Can we just play?
I know that. My first group, we would rotate our GMs around because you want to be the player.
It's DM fatigue for sure. If you play too much of it.
Yeah, exactly, and it can drain you in a way that you can refill your tank being the player at the table.
I always insist.
And it also helps appreciate the role of the GM more. It's hard to be a good GM if you never get to be the player.
I always insist that everyone who plays D&D has a responsibility at some point to be a GM for somebody else, but at the same time, everybody who is GMing all the time, you will burn out if you don't have your own game.
You've also got to learn to relinquish control, because especially a game like Dungeons and Dragons, D&D is both like, it's a wonderful game, and there's a reason why it's got the lion's share, but it's got some tricky issues you got to navigate around, and one of those is the GM just going on a power trip. It's very, very easy because they have all the secrets in ways that other tabletop games kind of take those powers away from the GM and delegate them to players. In Dungeons and Dragons, it is very easy to end up being a player where all you do is whatever the GM tells you to do, and your only agency is describing how you attack something. And that can be really demoralizing as a player.
Yeah. But similarly, I'm playing a home game, and the players in my home game are very much geared to being railroaded. Like they don't know what to do if I don't give them stuff to do, right? And
they need an arrow in the video game pointing them where to go.
Yeah. I've had players that if I railroad them, they'll kill me, and and I've had players where if I don't railroad them, they'll get frustrated at me because they'll kill me because they
it becomes
like,
a design
what
challenge when you're getting your
I don't
scenarios
know what you
ready.
want me to do.
Yeah, how much do you want to massage the scene and push them and gently move them along? And, so sometimes you might have an NPC that will act as like the Navi in Link. Exactly. Going, hey, listen, over here.
Other times, literally had it. Yeah.
And I have a game that I've been running. I ran out of a restaurant in the before times, and I would have a character like that who would show up as a guide. But if I found that the players were really into it and they were going along, that person would just never jump down from the trees, and they would just stay unintroduced. So it's kind of like being a magician. You need you have a number of ins and outs and threads that you can get through that all still lead to the same miracle at the end. And just finding out where to go. Do they need someone to yell at them to go into the cave? Or is the curiosity enough to lure them in?
Yeah.
My players forced me to do that. I had an old man, it was an old Warforged, an old robot character who was very unwell and needed saving from a particular situation.
Is this the guy that got picked up by a griffin?
This was the guy who got picked up by a griffin and dropped in the lake. My players basically went up to him.
We've all been there. Everyone's got that story.
My players walked up to him afterwards and were like, "Hey, you're an academic, right? Can you research all of this stuff because we don't know what we're doing." And so in last session, I had to have this old man walk into a tavern and be like, "So I finally found you. Now here's everything you might want to do to beat any of these 3 villains that there are." And I'm like, this guy didn't want to live this life, but you've put him in this situation. You've backed him into a corner. Now he has to be your mentor.
Oh no, I love that. I love that, and also turning that around to give that what was a throwaway reaction from the players into real consequences later. It's like, you've now destroyed this old man and turned him into this obsessive compulsive researcher.
He can't do this all the time.
It's funny.
Like this is going to burn him out one day. He's going to die overbooked. The candle's going to light on fire.
Will go out.
Will go out. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's interesting about the control stuff as a DM or as a GM. We're trying something in our first campaign, Veil, which we didn't really know if it was going to work. And so far, it's worked really well.
We really wanted to experiment with it.
Yeah, I am GMing it, but James is playing all the NPCs.
Oh, that's...
I essentially at the start of it basically said to Zach, like, "Oh, you're playing this game. I'm not going to be a player because you've got players already. But like, hey, if you ever want to do like a DM sort of controlled NPC, I could come in and play that guy. You could give that character a script and that character." And Zach was like, "Counter proposal. You play everyone,
all of them."
And I'm like,
that's too much power.
So now I get a script every week, and I have to learn it.
Years ago on Terrible Warriors, we played the fan-made Pokemon RPG.
Yeah.
And our GM, Julian, I was just on the other side of the glass hitting record, and our GM looked to me and was like, "Well, they're going to have a Professor Oak, and they're going to be talking to him and calling him up on the phone. Do you want to be that character that they call up and turn on your mic and jump in?" And I was like, 1, I don't know anything about Professor Oak. 2, I can't do a Professor Oak impression. And 3, I don't have any of your game notes. So anytime they call me, I'm going to go weird. And so I ended up just being this like demented old man who was sending these kids off to war. And they would call me over, they were like, "Excuse me, I'm just in the middle of eating my burger right now with Nurse Joy. How can I help you, young children?" And I would just scream at them. And it ended up becoming my most popular character I've ever done in my life.
Oh my
God. But also the challenge of the GM. So how are you even having that conversation?
We are having that conversation. So
are you getting any game notes?
Yeah, he gets all my game notes.
I'm getting game notes. Yeah, no,
whether or not he reads them is a total other thing.
Because whatever James says becomes dogma.
That's the thing.
Like,
we had this great moment of like kismet, like aligning. I had this character. He was called Pine
that's
Silver.
Chaos magic.
It was literal chaos magic.
True.
He was just a police officer who is going to talk to this other police officer NPC and say a bit of exposition. And he turned him into this like meek child whose dad yells at him and has a cute
Of course he did,
accent.
because James is not being the GM. So James doesn't have to think about the math, doesn't have to think about the stats, doesn't have to think about all the different plot threads. He just gets to inhabit this one character and just completely screw with you
and it's
for the
so
next 7 minutes.
I love that kind of chaos in a game. And so I knew that, I think sometimes in recorded things, there has to be an element of railroad. Obviously, you don't want to get so super railroady. I don't want to go down that path. So I liked introducing James as like this chaos entity that like knew the plan, but could just throw it at any moment.
I interface between the railroad and the like serious nonsense chaos. That's my interface job.
Yeah.
So I did want to ask, as you're preparing for this actual play, you're coming from. Have you recorded an actual play podcast before?
We have recorded several versions
of the
Orphans RPG, which have not made it to air. So we learned a lot from that.
So you've been learning how that. So my question is, you're going from like a very scripted background and drama background, and also certainly playing tabletops and knowing that world as the hobbyists that we are, turning that into a show, into a format, right? There's fitting it to times. Are you breaking it up into different parts and recording it? Also, it can be exhausting. Where versus playing at a table, we're all eating, we're going off to the bathroom, we're relaxing. There's table talk. When you're at a microphone, there's like a psychological switch that goes off where everyone doesn't break. And we're focused. And then after 4 hours of that, we are just like, it felt like we've played 12 hours of game.
Yeah.
And so what have you been doing and learning in your own way that you're finding that is these unique challenges in setting up, like even recording an actual play versus preparing to do a full actual play podcast that is dedicated to this? What have you been learning in this preparation stage, and what are your intentions going in, like your plans? How are you formatting that? How are you handling getting stuck in the rules, stuff like that? Right? What are you learning?
Finding the balance between rolling with the punches and reacting to what happens and what seems like is best for all of our players, and actively experimenting, right? Like reacting to the chaos that happens to you, and then taking control of the chaos that you can cause to your own game, and finding and knowing where that sort of middle ground is.
I always like to keep in the back of my mind, I'm always keeping an eye on the clock, because I like to format as I go. So I want the episodes to hit a certain length, so I'm kind of keeping an eye and making sure that where's the end point here in the episode narratively for the players, what feels like a natural break, and we'll hit kind of around that hour and a half mark in the recording, and I'll say, next time we'll blah blah blah, it's a lot of trial and error in terms of finding the pacing. We just in the episodes that we've recorded, we've done 3 episodes of the main campaign. We've done 4 or 5 episodes of You Wake in a Strange Place. We've done a whole Christmas campaign as well. And we're planning.
So this stuff is already recorded.
Oh yeah, that's just stuff we've already recorded.
So now you're going through. So how much? So now it's just all editing. So how much are you now learning as you're doing this editing? What is your hope on how it's going to sound in terms of? Is it going to be like this full immersive experience, or are we also going to hear the dice rolling?
I want to strike a balance. I don't want to. I don't want to make an audio drama. I want to make an RPG show. You know what I mean? We want to bring.
Sometimes we'll. Sorry. Yeah, sometimes we'll do specials that we may make more audio drama-y, and then other times, like You Awaken in a Strange Place, it really is kind of like half of that episode is us making the game up and all scribbling desperately of what words we've come up with.
What was that word?
just like how we want this like variety of game system and variety of story that we want to tell, we really want to have a variety across our different series of how much we sound design, how much we script and in what particular ways, and really explore everything that the podcast medium can do, as well as the role playing can do.
You can expect to hear music, you can expect to hear sound effects, but I think I'm never going to, at least in what I've done of the sound design so far, and I think how I envision it is we're never going to, the music and the sound effects are never going to be the priority. We're never going to be telling the story through sound effects. The narrative and the story is being told through the gameplay. And you're never ignoring the fact that there's an actual game with roles that you're hearing.
That is true,
that is going to be happening. We're never going to we're never going to put a curtain down on the fact that there is a game happening. You're in the story and you're enjoying it just like the players are, but they are players. They're not actors.
Yeah. It was something that James mentioned earlier about you were playing Dungeons and Dragons out of college, and then you were involved in making these dramas. And I feel like there's two kinds of people, right? The people that play tabletop games, and the people who play tabletop games and go, I need to record this. And, I was similar. I started in high school, but I was getting into working at a radio station, went off to college for radio broadcasting, and the whole time in the back of my head going, I have to record these games. This is going to be, the next thing. And lo and behold, that was, I think I was thinking that back in 2003, and here we are. What is it about playing these games that makes you want to share them as well, right? Because sometimes these games can be personal. They
oh my God,
vulnerable because you're role playing these characters and you fall in love with them and you get attached to them and attached to that world. So what is it for you that makes you want to, while you're rolling the dice, going, I really wish there was a microphone here?
It's that exact reason for me, because you are vulnerable and you are in the moment, and there are things that happen in games, in tabletop games, when you're with people and you're making this in the moment, that you can't replicate in a scripted series. You can't replicate those beautiful moments, and you can't replicate that kind of interplay between the characters. It's just, it's got its own beautiful quality that
and you can't retake it.
You can't retake it.
The first time it happens, you can't go back and try it again.
That's the thing. It just happens, and you live with it, and you need to capture those beautiful moments, because I love watching them. So, and I see so many of them in private, and I just thought I just need to share these. That's
all of that for sure. I'm going to be very arts student.
Oh God, here we go.
For a second, I'm going to be a real artist. I find that the beauty of writing scripted narratives comes when you reach this point when you're writing a story that you find that the story kind of tells itself, because you find those points where, like, well, how can this plot point not happen? I know it's so right for the narrative. How can it not happen? And that sort of feeling of a story as it writes itself when I do a lot of writing is so great. It really is that, like, chasing that sort of beautiful golden mystical kitsune fox spirit through the grass, and you're like, where will this story take me?
Well, it almost feels like if you wind the car up enough, eventually you get to this point, and it's a different point every single time, but there's always a point where you can put the car down and just let it go.
And it moves itself. Yeah. And I think as a lover of story, I have to, that is such a great part about how stories get told with role playing games. They're so emergent.
For RPG, it sounds like this isn't, a lot of actual play shows default to comedy, and not all RPGs are comedy.
Yeah.
In fact, almost all of the games I have played in the last couple of years have been serious or dramatic or horror or different genres, or playing with richer and more varied emotions than just simply slapstick. And so what could we expect in tone for RPG? What are you hoping to get? Is it just going to be for laughs, for the lulls, or are you striking out on maybe we're going to do a sad game today?
I think the problem is that Zach and I are
we want to do it all.
People. We're silly people. We do want to do it all, but we're fundamentally very silly people. Oftentimes when we are left in charge, we'll make something funny. And the problem with the Orphans as an audio drama is that it's very tragic, and we like leaning into the tragic as part of that. And so when so I think the games, at least initially, that you and I run are going to be us having a laugh, but that's why we get in Ella to run Nibiru. That's why we are so desperate to like be players for our guest GMs who are going to be a part of our cast, because they're most likely going to want to run serious stories. And God, I want to be part of a serious story. As well as have a laugh.
I would also say you shouldn't be surprised if what starts out as a very funny campaign gets serious by the end. Has some real emotional weight to it. That's why we're
called Light and Tragic.
We named our company Light and Tragic.
Why we went for that.
We like finding the light moments, but really injecting with real pathos and tragedy. And hopefully we can pull that off.
Hopefully there's a mixture of that.
It's a tall order.
So Realm of Peril and Glory is in development now. Oh, Realms of Peril and Glory.
Yes. A lot of words in there.
Is in development right now. You're working on getting these recorded. Is it your hope to have all of the games recorded and packaged before you release the first episode?
Not all of them, because we're going to be running continually, but we would like to have a significant amount of them prepped and ready.
We're essentially, as far as I can tell, Zach's plan, we're recording sort of 3 full series in advance. The Veil campaign, which is Zach's tightly scripted GM one. My 5e D&D 5e one, which is sort of my scripted one, and then a series of YASPs, of You Awaken in Strange Places, which is all completely improvised. And then we'll release theirs over and Christmas Caper and the other specials, and we'll release those over sort of the year between the middle of 2021 until the middle of 2022, and then we'll spend that year doing what we spent the last year doing, making more series and releasing theirs and playing around with it. And it's, I think our goal is to get a running set of series on this.
And so with each series, you'll also be, it sounds like you're also rotating the players around and the crew that are involved in each game. Well, hey, that's actually very similar to how terrible. It's funny, many podcasts are a set group, and it's always that like same 4 people. And when one person leaves, another person will be brought in, but it remains as like a core group. And I don't know how those podcasts exist, because that sounds incredibly difficult.
Well, we found it difficult when we're just recording one set of players, just scheduling wise. It can be difficult.
Scheduling wise for sure, but a big reason why Terrible Warriors became the anthology show of rotating players that it was out of necessity, not just out of a desire for that format, but just every time it was time to get a new schedule, it's like, well, no, these people aren't available to record with me again. So I got to find 3 more people and also learn a new game and put that out.
We have the benefit of a lot of the people that we're playing with are our friends and colleagues and contacts within the audio drama space, because we started with audio dramas, and a lot of them have their own recording setups at home, know what it's like to schedule big recording sessions, and so we do have the benefit. We're playing on easy mode in that regard.
For years I was cheating because I worked at a radio station. I could just invite people down to the radio station on the weekend, and now I'm not even allowed to go to the radio station anymore.
I think remote record. I don't know if we'll ever move away from remote recording for
remote
RPG.
Great. I mean, I think every so often we are going to want to get
get people together
when the
I
empire
think remote
is
recording
gone.
has certainly made it like I can now have people invited. Like I can talk to the two of you here,
Yes.
and if I want to play a
amazing.
game, I can bring people in from anywhere. But
and meeting new people is so great for
and
that.
meeting new people. Sure, I've had a very hard time adjusting to being online. I love the joy for me playing tabletop is not playing over Discord.
Yeah,
the joy for me
too.
playing tabletop is sitting around
100%.
the table and feeling the energy in that room that is so hard to get over a webcam. And rolling that dice and sharing drinks and just it's also a time for me to turn all my equipment off, right? Like even when we were recording, I was recording on an SD card and I could turn the computer off. And so tabletop was my offline like shutdown where everything's pencil and paper and books and
100%.
I'll do that everywhere else. And so I'm looking forward to being able to play around tables again. And
I have a desperate need for that.
I volunteered last year in 2020 for Gen Con online and I ran games and that worked, but it was also weird. It was very weird. It's hard to, it's a different skill that's involved in conveying and talking over this medium versus being at a table.
Yeah.
And some people I am jealous have thrived.
I really started flourishing as a GM online, really.
Yeah. And I'm just biding my time and waiting to be able to reopen my door.
No, me too.
And bring people back over.
I think we're desperately gonna. I really do think that at some point we're gonna have to record some specials where we're all sitting around a table.
I mean, maybe it'll be a special occasion.
But I think the balance has to be found because this really does of finding that this really opens up our options for who we play with and how we play.
And it is more accessible. My apartment itself is not fully
stuff.
accessible. There's a set of stairs I have to get in. So there were people that I could not invite to record with us and also geographically or people who work on the weekends. And so having remote setup, but then you're mentioning you've got the benefit of having to work with a team of people who have setups at home.
Yes. Yeah.
And, to them, most of the people that appeared on Terrible Warriors didn't podcast or stream at home. And so they didn't have equipment. I think there's also people are forgiving us of, the quality of what podcasts, like you see, like even on TV shows like Colbert and that have been having to record in remote locations and in smaller groups. There's a more forgiving attitude about that because I think everyone understands that this is a weird time. It's been a learning curve, and I would just wish I hadn't spent 2 years investing in a home studio.
No, because I would have done the same thing. That's the thing. If I'd said. I mean, we were trying to do that. We were 2 weeks away from recording the first session of the Orphans RPG, the second go around with players around a table. We were going to be doing, all the recording in one space. I was going to be doing live sound design as we went, so I could time it to the players in the room. It was a whole production, and literally the day before. We were going to get together. I kind of had to say, guys, I've got a cough. I can't come. And then everyone was like, actually, we don't really think it's very safe to go out. And I was like, I can't blame you for thinking that. And it was a really difficult thing to have to let that go.
But there will come a day when we all
I swear to God, it will come
around a table and roll dice together. And on that day, we will all have terrible dice rolls, and
we're gonna make sea shanties about this year. Is what's gonna happen.
We're
gonna
have songs that we will sing.
We haven't mentioned James is a composer, and he is gonna be composing all the music for Realms of Peril Glory.
Oh yeah.
Oh well, James, I should have you on again because I would love to talk to you just about that, like more laser focused. Because one of the things I'm not composing music, but I've been editing for other a show, Crits and Giggles, and of course Terrible Warriors here, where I have a music licensing agreement with a library, and I've been like designing the soundscape of those shows and layering that and adding it in and doing that. And I think maybe there'll be a series of interviews that I'll do with other people that are not necessarily the ones that you hear on the podcast, but the ones that are editing these shows. And I'd love to do like a behind the actor studio kind of thing, of just like what the process and thinking that goes into making these shows. Because dude, sometimes just sitting around a table and rolling dice is fun, but if you just put a microphone and you hit record and you listen to it afterwards,
it's not necessarily very dynamic. No,
it's a little dry, and some of that magic gets lost that music can help draw out, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm Zach's Taylor composer.
You're the troubadour.
I am the in-house bard. And I never used to be a composer, and then I did all the music for the Orphans, and then I did all the music.
We did the same thing of like the NPCs of like, you're like, oh, I made this track for the Orphans. What do you think? I was like, that's great. Do you want to compose the whole next season?
That's a good track. Do you want to make everything? Yeah. Okay. Sure, I could probably do that.
I go in hard.
And I think getting again the difference that I found between audio drama music and role-playing game music is that audio drama music is designed to follow the energy of an individual scene, but role-playing game and actual play music is supposed to be something in the background that's loopable,
more ambient.
Is a lot more like video game music than it is like film music for audio dramas, and having musically been inspired by both.
And it's totally impossible for you to score custom 14 hours of content. So you've really had to think about breaking things down so I can take the stems and make something out of it for a moment if I need it. How do we loop this track so it can go longer? You know, you've really put a lot of thought into that stuff.
Yeah, it's tremendous fun though.
James and Zach, where can we follow up with each of you if we wanted to know what you're up to and the projects you're involved in?
Yeah. So I'm at ZachFG on Twitter. You can also find our show, The Orphans, at Orphans Audio on Twitter. Realms of Peril and Glory, you can find it Realms Pod on Twitter, RealmsPod. You can also find Realms of Peril and Glory and The Orphans on any podcast app if you just search Realms of Peril and Glory or The Orphans. And James, where can they find you?
Well, I mean, I'm terrible at I'm terrible at social media, so I always defer to our.
Where there's a Zach, there will be a shadow in the shape of James's beard.
Yes. Yeah, that's me. I'm the little I'm Wobbuffet's tail. I'm always hanging out behind, and you don't know I'm the real Pokemon. So I always defer to Light and Tragic and our Patreon, because if you try to find me on Twitter, all you will get is snarky political comments about stonks.
But if you're listening to this before August time, there is currently a feed for Realms of Peril and Glory. So if you like what you hear and you want to stay tuned, head over to your podcast app, search Realms of Peril and Glory, and it'll be there. You'll hear my voice going, "Welcome to the feed for Realms of Peril and Glory, guys."
We're really excited about what we got going on. I'm so glad you're here. Oh. And you know, I'm going to put this out because I need content.
Yeah,
so this interview is getting released because I thought this was fine, and I want to check in with you as we get closer to the actual release.
Sounds good.
Because I'm sure between now and August,
I will have learned a lot.
Happen.
We'll have learned a lot as well.
We'll have learned a lot. We'll come back and say everything we said was wrong.
So everything we said is completely different.
Well, and certainly, and let's check back in again in a few months, because I'd like to know any lessons that we could find, because so many people want to get in and record their games and do actual plays, and part of me wants to tell them, no, don't do that. It's really difficult, and it might make you hate this hobby. And
you're seeing us as the fresh-faced babies we are going into.
And there's so much good content out there. I do like to think we know
something about burnout.
Oh, we do.
After having run a show, and about how to avoid it, but we'll see if that's true.
But three months down the line, we're all going to have. 3 months down the line, we're going to have like face scars and eye patches. We're all going to be like the dark universe versions of ourselves.
Yeah, I need more leather in my closet. Yeah.
Oh, you thought you could just improv a series, did you? Well, you're wrong, boys.
There's like a beam in of you from the future going, James, whatever you do, don't do that show.
Don't let Zach convince you to do the damn show.
It's your improv, James. Something's got to be done about your improv.
It's like, you and Zach are fine. It's your improv.
It
The improv that's the problem. You're not funny, man.
James and Zach, thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for telling me about your show. I'm going to check out The Orphans and subscribe and listen because I've burned through all of my podcast content, so I need more things to listen to. And all of the best in the future here with this new show. It sounds like a brave undertaking. I'm very excited. It sounds like, in a very interesting way, your intentions are very much aligned with what kind of actual play show I make. And that idea of like an anthology show that explores different types and ways to play this game. And, you know, I love Dungeons and Dragons, but I do think that if you play other sessions, when you return to D&D, you come at it with a new appreciation and better ways to tell your stories, more effective understandings of narrative and character interactions and drama and tension and all that other kinds of stuff. And I'd love to pick your brain. I know, Zach, we didn't get any time to do this, but I know you really love breaking down different sessions or systems and rules. And I'd love to pick your brain about, you know, as this show continues, what systems you're discovering. I think these conversations never end.
That's the thing. And I'm going to keep finding new systems and being like, oh, this one's shiny. We should play this one.
I thought I was being all cool when I deep dive cut in Nibiru, and then you were already one step ahead of me.
Like,
so,
we're recording it this month, man. I'm not read up on the rules for that, so I might come back to the next interview and be like, oh my God, Nibiru.
Send me a ping if you got any questions. I read the whole book. I love it. I'm really looking forward to it. I wish I could play it, actually. Of all the games we did for Session 0, that was the first one I really came across was going, because we just did Spire by Grant Howitt, and I was like, this might be the next one we do. This is really good, and it really, it was really evocative and really drawing me into what I could do if I was recording it. So I'm really excited to see what you do with this game. And they just put out a Kickstarter the week that we're recording this for Xanadu, of an exploration of the core of Nibiru and breaking that down. So there's more Nibiru coming out. So. That's very exciting. Anyway, we've already said goodbye. We've already done our plug, and we talked for another 10 minutes. So
whoops.
I'm very bad at this. But James, Zach, I really want to meet up with you again and talk to you. Thank you again for the time you spent.
Thank you for having us.
And and
it's been great.
For you, my dear listener, we will be back again next week. I don't know with what. Hopefully doing another Session 0, maybe another Spotlight interview, or maybe I'm going to tell you a little bit about my game that I ran called Sweetwater Bank in Dungeons & Dragons, because a lot of people have been hearing me talk about this game in my interviews, and I was thinking it might be fun if I took you through the whole module step by step and help you understand the decisions I make of why did I put this here? Why do I do that there? Because I think I struck gold with this one scenario that I ran at this restaurant of making a game that I feel is entry level, but also fun for someone who's really enjoying the game and has played it a lot. And it can slot kind of anywhere in an ongoing game or be the first story to send you off on a whole new one. And I think after playing it, I've been at a place where I've run this one game like 17 times now. And every single time it's a little bit different and it evolves and I learn a little bit more about that story and I'm in a really unique position. So I'm thinking I might, maybe next week that's what I'll do is I'll share that story.
Definitely do that.
And I'll take you through the story of Sweetwater Bank. So
that'd be great.
That's all me. That's just me doing my plug because I don't want to edit that in later in a post roll. So,
oh my God, yeah,
you know how it is.
That is what we've
We're
been
all
doing.
busy in the pandemic.
You know what would be fun? Doing like a reverse You Awaken in a Strange Place where one of us concocts a one shot and then we do a whole series of different players playing that one shot
game?
with no knowledge of with no like foreknowledge of the story, recording a bunch of that in advance and releasing that and seeing how one shot
that would be really fun
so
now of what if like 7 different podcasts all did that? they all did one episode of their own game, and they're all playing the exact same module that someone has written, but everyone has their own interpretation on that exact same. It's like cover songs of cover songs.
This is
Stop it, Justin. We're coming up with gold.
That could be a really cool. Maybe that's a charity thing that we do one year for child.
Just a giant crossover, really with like 5 different podcasts.
Oh,
amazing. Yeah. So maybe that sounds really cool.
We're just full of ideas.
How different GMs run the same thing. Anyway,
all right, well, we're gonna have to take this into private because someone's gonna steal these ideas now. So Zach, James, don't go anywhere. No. And for you, listener, we'll see you again next week. And until that fateful time when we are playing around tables and rolling dice together and breathing the same air, be good to each other.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.